Okay, cool. So we're going to get started again with remote viewing, and then we'll have time for questions and answers.
Right. Remote viewing is one of the easier things that you can do. The hardest thing about remote viewing is to keep your intellect out of it. That's the most difficult thing. Keep your intellect out of it. As soon as you try to guess, to figure out, to say, well, it couldn't be this and it couldn't be that, and that leaves this. As soon as you do analysis, you're lost in the remote viewing process. Remote viewers have this really, it works out very wonderful for them, and they have protocols that help them remote view. And they do a whole lot better when they use these protocols. The protocol is triple blind. They get somebody to make up, say, places on the planet or whatever their targets are, pictures, something. And they get somebody to do that, and they make up like 100 of them. And then they take those 100 pictures and they give them to somebody else. And all these are people not really attached to the program. These are, secretary in the office down the hall. They get somebody else to take all those pictures and put them in envelopes and just write a number on the envelope. Then they take all those envelopes and they give them to somebody else. Somebody else goes over and picks one of them out without looking at them, just picks one out, goes over to the remote viewer and says, tell me where the location is in this envelope. Nobody ever opens the envelope after it's sealed. Not the person that's asking the remote viewer, not the nobody gets it out and looks at it and reads it or something. They just say, tell me what this target is. That's triple blind, and that makes it really good science. It also makes it really easy for remote viewers because the process just takes their intellect right out of the equation. There's absolutely no way that they can have any idea whatsoever that would help them guess. So the guessing is gone. So the best remote viewing targets are targets for which you have absolutely no idea, unable to guess. So I'm going to draw some things over here as remote viewing targets, and you can guess some because I'm not going to draw the Mona Lisa or something complicated in the New York skyline or something like that because I can't draw worth a darn, and secondly it's only going to take me a few minutes, so you know it's something simple, but still that's not helpful. It's much better to have no idea whatsoever of what the target might be. The second thing that trips people up, besides the intellect, is that the answer, just like with the healing, the answer will come very quickly. As soon as you have the question in your mind of, what's in the box or what did he just draw, that millisecond is when you get the answer. A tenth of a second later, it's gone. So the problem is with many people is they say, all right, what's the target? And they go, all right, let me get ready. Okay, all right, what's the target? And the target was long gone. They already got the message. So they're at a loss then. And then they say, well, I didn't get anything. It's because they weren't paying attention immediately when they had the thought. And sometimes having the thought and knowing that you have the thought are really two different things, because you are going to want to know, well, what is it? That's it, you've done it, you've made the query. And you might say, well, I wonder what that is. Okay, I'm going to ask now. What's in the box? You already asked, you got the answer, it's done. You see the problem? It's easy to get lost in this because you have to have really good control over your thinking process and and how to turn it off. You have to think at the being level. This all has to happen at the being level, not at the intellectual level. Hardest thing in remote viewing is to work from the being level. That's really the hardest thing in anything that's paranormal. If you want to hold a spoon and watch it just fall over like it was made out of silly putty, it has to happen at the being level. The intellectual level, you can wish that thing to bend all you want and it'll just sit there. But at the being level, you can do all sorts of things. So that's one of the things we have to learn, is to let the intellect go away and sit down. The intellect, for most of us, is where your ego lives mostly. That's where your beliefs are. And those ego and beliefs will just trip you up very quickly. That's why the intellect has to be banished. It's one of the reasons the intellect has to be banished. Okay, so remote viewing is going to be just like the healing. We're not going to breathe deeply. We're not going to meditate. We're not going to, hold hands and sing first or any of that. Don't need any preparation. All you need to do is focus on what you're doing. Have a clear intent. Know when you have the intent. Have the intent on purpose and get the answer back almost immediately. Now, don't expect to get a photograph. That's not the way it is. Don't look for a picture. Don't look for anything. If you have any expectations, that will ruin the process. If you try to guess what it is, that will ruin the process. So if you see a round circle, don't say an apple. That's a guess. What you saw was a round circle. It turns out to be a button. It turns out to be a stop sign. You see? So if you see a round circle that's red, maybe just say, it's all round, a red circle. Don't try to make it into an apple. Just let it be what it is. And if what you saw was a line that went this way, that's what you put down in your paper. Put down a line that went that way, even if that's the only thing you have on your paper. So it doesn't have to be something. That's the second or the third thing. People say, well, I didn't get anything. And you say, what do you mean you didn't get anything? You say, well, I just kept getting this stuff like that, but it doesn't mean anything. It's just garbage. And then they found out that's what the target was, a bunch of stuff like that. So don't try to interpret it. Just put down whatever comes into your mind. And then if you want to, you can say, well, what else was there? See if something else pops into your mind. If you have to go searching for it, you've already lost the opportunity. Don't go searching for it. It has to come to you. It comes to you as soon as you ask. And many remote viewers work just like artists work. They'll get a thing and they'll go, okay, and they'll put a mark here, and a slash over here, and a dash down there, and it doesn't mean anything. And I say, well, what else? And they'll do this. What else? And they'll draw a circle here and a circle here. And after about 15 minutes of this, you know how artists put a picture together and they just do all this stuff that doesn't look like anything, and then suddenly it all comes together and you go, wow, where did that face come from? Because they do a bit of the chin, then they do this ear, and then they do some hair over here, and somehow it all comes together. Well, remote viewers do the same way. They will put just pieces. And that's because what they have is such a complex target, they don't get it all at once like a picture. Most remote viewers don't get pictures, they get elements of it. And then they add those elements up to a final thing, and then they get judged on how many elements they got right. So you're not looking for a photograph. You're just looking for anything. A line, a circle, a dash, a color, a smell, sound, anything. Because you see, if I draw a picture of a party hat, you may not get anything that looks like a party hat. Instead, you may hear people laughing. You may hear, like the sounds you get at a cocktail party, a lot of people talking and people laughing. That may be what you get. And that would be a hit, because what I drew was a party hat, you see. So don't try to interpret Just whatever you get, put it down on the paper, just as you get it. Okay, that is the hardest thing to do about remote viewing. Because it is so simple, it's really difficult. So I'm going to draw some pictures, and then I'll let you, why don't you wait until I'm done? I'll draw the picture. I mean, you can try to see it as I draw it, but don't try to watch my arm and see what my arm is doing. Don't do that, just let it be. Okay? Don't try to guess, that just will ruin it for you. Well, I still did a whole lot of that, so it must be, just let it go. And I said, okay, I'm done, what is it? Then, ask your question, okay? But if it comes to you while I'm doing it, you can write that down too. You know, unless you're practiced remote viewers, almost anything goes when you're starting out. You have to help, you got to develop this over time. Let's see, what else should I tell you about remote viewing? No, I guess that's enough. Let me go, make a drawing. And we'll see. So, don't watch me. Okay, I'm done. Remote view what I've drawn. If you have problems or getting muddled up, you can just start over. Okay, that's probably plenty of time. Anybody still working on it? Needs more time? All right, then let's see what it is. Circles, concentric circles. So, anybody get any circles? Yeah. How many didn't get anything that was even close? Yeah, about the same number of people, so about half the people, about the same number of people who got circles. Okay. Now it's easier to remote view architectural elements as opposed to very detailed pictures. That's just an easier thing to do. It's simpler because it's just a simple architectural element. You know, it's just circles and circles and circles. You don't look at that and say, "Oh, it's a bullseye. It's an archery target." It's just circles. Okay, now I'm going to do another one. All right.
So good.
Keep practicing these things when they go back up and actually go back. Well, there's something.
Okay, all done. Go ahead and remote view it. Okay, ready to take a look? So a flower of some sort, and maybe you would have gotten a bee, an insect, a bee, because flowers are associated with bees. You'll get associations often. If not a flower, maybe you got the flower pot. You know, if you do a pot, that may be the association with the flower. So you'll get associated targets. So how many people get some elements of that right? Well, a lot of people. How many really just nailed it? They drew a flower. Good.
We both drew a boat.
A boat?
Yeah.
I saw your boat.
It must be this linear line.
Yeah. Often people will pick up on each other's thoughts. A boat? Well, what about that as boat-like? A propeller? A boat propeller? See, that's what I drew first. First thing I drew was the circle, then I drew this. And if that then reminded you of a circle, because a boat propeller is a circle with things out around it. And the last thing I drew was that. So a boat propeller, of course, would remind you of a boat. Or it may remind you of a fan. But probably more like a boat propeller, because a fan would have a cage around it. They don't make fans where the blades are just out like that. So a boat may have picked up some of the architectural elements of that. See, that's the problem with your mind trying to turn it into something. Your mind takes that, and that reminds you of a boat propeller, which then turns into a boat. Whereas if you just don't go there with propellers or boats, you just draw what you get, then you'd have a flower. So, but it's hard not to do that. It's hard to not name it, because that's what we do. Normally in this reality, we name things. But you probably got the shapes and then turned that into a propeller, which turned into a boat. Yes?
What about associations of things? I drew a spring. And could you say, well, it's spring and you have flowers in the spring? Does it work on verbal?
Yes, it can work on all sorts of things, yes, because you get ideas and then you start to fill in around the idea. It's the same sort of thing. You'll get the data, and because you're not practiced enough, you don't just say, oh, that's the data and I'll put it down. You get the data and then you turn it into something. So you get the idea of a spring, but a spring is actually kind of curly as well. It's got a lot of loops in it, so it's kind of loopy. And that may be the association there as well. But spring, flowers, yes. You could have a bird, a bee, you know, that sort of thing. Or you may even have thought of something that was that had an odor to it. You know, maybe the odor may be the association you have with the flower. And the odor may be completely wrong because you think, odor, it's an odor. Well, it must be something strong then. I bet it's stinky. You see, which would be wrong, but that's you filling in the details when you're not really supposed to do that. You just get what you get and don't fill anything in. Don't try to turn it into anything. All right, let's do another one. That's not a bad flower, is it? Yeah, right. Right, I'm gonna sign these and we're gonna auction them off. Yeah. Okay, what does that look like? Okay, this time I did something that I hope is very difficult for you to make up a story about it. So it's harder for you to fill in. It's just something that's very difficult to make anything else of it. So maybe that makes it easier. Maybe not. Okay, now you may have gotten down. You may have gotten rain. You may have gotten things like below. Yeah. You may have got that sinking feeling. Okay, how many got elements of that right? How many got it right? How many got it? One.
3 out of 5 lines.
Oh, well, that's all right. If you get 3 of them like that, then that's enough. It's just repetitive. It's not important that you get so many, so that I'd say that's nailed it. All right, we'll try another one. All right, all done. Now, one of the things you can focus on when you remote view, you don't have to just see it from back here. You can project yourself, and in your mind, you're standing back here looking at it. Or you can wait and see me picking up the easel and turning it around and showing it to you. See, these are tools that get your imagination involved in the process of what it is. So you can go into a little imaginary thing. So here I am, and I walk around, and I pick it up, and I turn it around, and there it is. You see, so there's different ways that you can use tools to do this. Where you can just project your vision back here and look at it. You can bring it up on a TV screen, a monitor. So you'll have this monitor, and here it is, it's a big monitor sitting up there. And when you hit the button over here, the picture will come up on the monitor. That's another technique that you can do. So that just kind of involves your imagination and focusing your intent. And it clearly designates the spot of when you're asking. So when I push the button, I'll get it. So there's other techniques. You can try some of those techniques. It's still there if you want.
Okay.
And never throw anything out because you think it's garbage, because it doesn't make any sense. Always put it down, all right? There he goes. He's going to turn it around. Last chance. Okay.
Oh, nice.
Okay. Now that one is often an easy one that people get immediately, but discard because it's too corny. That's why I cautioned you, don't throw it away, because a lot of people say, yeah, it's the first thing I got was a happy face, but that's ridiculous. I tossed that out.
I got the smiley face the time before.
Yeah.
Yeah. I told you that there will be some that are just out of sequence. That happens. That happens regularly. Every time I do this, there will be people who get right answers out of sequence.
Did you know you were going to do a smiley face next?
No, I didn't figure that out till just now. But yes, it's hard to say how these things get passed around. Yes.
Did you know in advance which form of drawings you were going to do?
No, I just came back, and when I got back there, I had made it up. Each one of them I just kind of made up as I got there. I tried not to say anything like this. So the fact that he got one before I drew it, that happens all the time. Why does that happen? Consciousness is a very interesting thing. We're all netted, we're all connected.
That's true.
And though it didn't come to my mind to draw that happy face or the flower until I was there, who knows that I could have been thinking of it, or who knows that the picture was given to him and then the system nudges me to draw it, just so that it would be a verification for him. I mean, it's hard to say how the system works when you're dealing with an information system, and we're all pieces of it on a data line. There's hundreds of ways that things are possible.
So my person next to me drew a happy face on the first one, so it was in the field here, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, that happens. I'll often get people, well, I'll do 5 of these, and I'll often, out of a group this size, I'll have 3 people, they got every one of them right, but in the wrong order. And each one of them got it in a different wrong order. And it's like, yeah, stuff happens. This is a very, a digital information system is immensely flexible. It can do just lots of things. So you have to have a very open mind, but you also have to be skeptical. But when I do this over and over, and I always get people who do that, then it has to be a thing that's happening. It's not just random events.
Just a quick question and an odd one at that too. What is the purpose of remote viewing?
The purpose of remote viewing is to train your mind to let the intellect go, think from the being level, quiet the noise, control your thoughts in as much as you say, okay, I want the answer now, so you know when right away comes, not this kind of fuzzy thing that you're not quite sure exactly when you ask the question. So it's the purpose is as an exercise in controlling is maybe not the right word, but having your intent under your control and not just flying around all over the place. And the bigger purpose then is if you can do that, you will very quickly convince yourself that remote viewing is a real thing. You can really do it, and there is some kind of a non-physical transfer of information of some sort happening. And for a lot of people, that is a big deal, to just have first-hand evidence that this indeed is a digital information system, and that information has many paths. And to read about it, your intellect says, okay, yeah, I read the article, there's lots of people, they do it, the CIA does it, and you can go to websites, but that's not the same as you doing it. When you sit down here and you get these right, and you know the possibility of you getting them right is really remote. There's a lot of things I could have put down there, so there's probably 1 in 1,000 if you just guessed. So the fact that you get it right, or even get strong elements of it right, is pretty strong evidence that you've got some information. But if you do it 500 times, keep track of your statistics, you'll find out that you can end up with 1 in 5,000 that you could have just guessed at that well. So that's the point of it, is to build confidence in that it exists, it's real, and build up experience in being in control of your own consciousness, as opposed to just your consciousness kind of flapping around loose, however it normally does. And it's pretty much the same with the healing. It's pretty much the same with all the paranormal things. The value in them is in the practice of controlling your mind. To grow up and become love, you never have to do anything paranormal. The paranormal is not a prerequisite to anything. But if you do things that are paranormal, it often will help you grow up, because it gives you first-hand experience, it builds confidence in your thinking and the ideas that you have, and it just gives you practice in becoming aware of what's in your mind. So that's it's kind of secondary advantages, but primarily it's of no use whatsoever. I have found that the people who are best at these things generally start out super enthusiastic. They work at it till they get good. They get really good and they're totally convinced that this is real because they've done it thousands of times, and then they're not interested anymore. They let it go. So generally people who are the best at these things don't bother with it because it's just not that important. Once you have trained your ability and mind and control so you can, your consciousness isn't just flapping around. There's no need to really do it anymore. And even the healing, you think, well, you're really helping somebody heal, but mostly you're really just practicing on your mind because everything is pretty much the way it's supposed to be already. And you don't have to change anything to make it better. And if you believe that you are changing things to make it better, that's probably a sign that you need to do a little more work. So you don't bother. It's not that important. But it's a good way to learn, and it has value in the educational process.
Okay, so we do have some more questions, people that come up to me. So Rennie will come up to ask the next question. And then Sasha, yes. So I'll remember this.
That's great. Okay.
And then just make sure this is good to the mic.
Okay. Go ahead. First of all, I'd just like to say thank you with all humility. You know, you're posting all the material that you post online for free affected my life so huge. After watching all those videos, I said, you know, why isn't the whole world talking about this? And I said, how do I get the whole world to talk about this? So along with my wife and I, we wrote a series of consciousness books that's being developed for a television show. So it's going to reach a much broader audience.
Right.
So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
I have two quick questions. I'd love to know what your thoughts are on a galactic cycles, like the Great Year Cycle, the yugas, and how that affects consciousness. And the second one is, if the speed of light is a constant, how does that relate to quantum entanglement?
Those are a little, an apple and an orange there at the end. Okay, let's start with big cycles. First of all, this physical reality is the derivative. It's the subset. Okay. So what happens in the physical reality in general does not drive anything in consciousness, because the physical doesn't drive consciousness. On the other hand, the consciousness can use the physical reality to get messages across sometimes.
Okay.
Take the idea of astrology, just as an example. The system needs to make new IUOCs because the population keeps expanding. So it keeps needing more seats in the game. So it makes an IUOC by duplicating. Oh, here's an average kind of typical IUOC. Copy, paste, paste, paste. So now you have 3 of them. But you don't want all 3 to be exactly the same, because you don't want a whole bunch of people walking around that are identical. You know, that would be silly. So you want them to be different. Well, how do you make them different? You make them different by several ways. You can have a random number. This is how people who make computer games, they'll have a critter model. And that critter model will have 10 random numbers associated with it. If you pick this random number, it tells you whether it has a tail or not. You pick this one, it tells you how many feet it has. You know, 4 feet, 3 feet, 8 feet. You pick this one, and it tells you whether it's got an endoskeleton or exo, you know, just things about it.
Right.
So you pick all these random numbers, and you throw random numbers at it, and you get all kinds of critters. And because there's 10 random numbers, there's like 50 trillion different critters that come out of just that. And that's how they generate a lot of things, just from that critter model. Okay, well now we've got an IUOC model. But how do you get the differentiations? Well, one way that you could get it, and it would leave a little telltale evidence for the people to help them wake up and see a bigger picture. You could say, well, there's two facts in everybody's existence, and that is time and space in this virtual reality. So you could take that time variable and that space variable and let those spin random numbers, or let them signify something, and you'd end up with astrology. So you actually, the system could help that modify the possibilities into types, you see? And maybe there's 12 different numbers that you get, you know, for the whatever, and I'm just making this up. It could be what do you hear, what is the name of that, something in Briggs, Myers-Briggs. Myers-Briggs breaks up personalities into
64.
Wow, that's too many.
Is that too many?
16,
Oh,
right?
is it 16?
Yeah, 16 groups. And if you go between groups and define that as a group, you can get 32. But there's 16 basic groups. So it could be doing the same thing. It says, all right, we need personalities to be spread out and types of people to be spread out over all kinds of things. Everybody being the same is a bad idea. Diversity is a good idea. So let's have these, what is it, 4 variables, right, that can be put in 4 ways, so you end up with these 4 variables and all the possible combinations you can get. So let's just do random draws on those 4 variables for everybody that comes out. Well, there you go, Myers-Briggs, you see. So I just give that as an example of how physical things could actually have meaning within consciousness. But in general, what happens here physically doesn't drive anything in consciousness. Now, consciousness drives things here in the sense that we modify future probability with our intent. That's consciousness driving things here. And let's say we have a whole bunch of people, maybe a whole country or nation or globe full of people who are angry and upset and annoyed all the time, and that may drive things like storms or earthquakes, other kinds of things, because they are creating angry events, things that are, you know, bigger symbols of themselves, bigger representations of themselves. So in that way, consciousness can drive physical events in the world. So there's relationships to that. And on the other side, as people grow up and as people have bigger pictures and become more caring, you may find that there's a lot fewer of that violent stuff, and that there's a lot less bad weather, and that it's easier to make flowers grow because there's just a nicer energy that's supporting, you know, growth and that sort of thing. So there's an interaction between us and the planet. And so I'm not sure that answers your question,
Yeah.
but as far as do, you know, big galactic cycles influence this, I can almost reduce that to the planetary stars, you know, give you a horoscope. It's not that gravity, as part of the rule set, changes people. And if you get the various things, what you've done when you rearrange yourself relative to other big masses, what you've done is modified gravitational fields a little bit everywhere. So it's not that that gravitation affects consciousness or affects people, but if the system can somehow use that to an effect, like it might in you know, having 12 houses and different personality types, it may do that just to give us a wake-up point. So it doesn't mean those things are never connected,
Right.
but the connection is the other direction. It's consciousness is the force behind the connection, and the physical thing is just what consciousness decided to do.
Okay. That's good.
Yes. So the gravity doesn't affect anything. There is no gravity. There are no, there is no field. See, those are just things that we make up. They're just information that exists in places in space.
So do you don't think the torus, it ties into all that? Like everything's just this energy torus constantly reinventing itself in and out?
Well, that's a good metaphor.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's all it is.
yeah. It's a good metaphor. And we know that we can take a torus like that, and if we make a torus in 4 space, in 4-dimensional torus, and I talk about geometric dimensions, we end up with a 3-dimensional surface. Because the surface is always one less dimensional than the object. So a 4-dimensional object is a 3-dimensional surface. And that 3-dimensional surface has many of the properties that we find in our universe. So people, make things like that up.
A model to understand.
Yeah, a model to understand. But I think in general, it's metaphorical or just mathematics. It doesn't really have any fundamental force in it.
Okay. And the second question?
Yeah. What was your second question?
If the
Speed of light and
speed of light is a constant, how does that relate to quantum
The
entanglement?
speed of light being a constant doesn't, well, it is part of quantum mechanics actually, but it mostly relates to relativity. That speed of light as a constant is the basis of relativity theory.
Right.
So you start with an assumption of the speed of light is constant, and from that a little algebra gives you special relativity. And then when you want to add gravity to the equation, and Einstein did that with geometry. So he made the space-time curve, and that was where the gravity fit in. That's just mathematics, basically. It's a gravitational model that allowed relativistic effects, whereas the old gravitational model, GMM over R squared,
Right.
that didn't allow relativistic effects. So he made one that was more general, that allowed relativistic effects, and it turned out to be a geometry model. That's just a model. That doesn't really say anything about how gravity works. It's just that you can make this model, and it allows you to get good answers. It doesn't say anything about really curved space and the rest of it. Curved space is just explanations that we come up with to explain things. They're models, but not necessarily reality. Now, what does that have to do with quantum mechanics? Quantum mechanics depends on, it deals with little things. Delta T's and delta X's, where are things and when are they going to be there? And the little things resolve into, from quantum mechanics theory, Planck length, Planck time, which is where the speed of light comes from. So there's a connection there with the small world of particles and delta T's and the relativistic theory. So the speed of light is integral into quantum mechanics. You have, I'm thinking of like your equation for h bar. There's a, not ringing a bell?
No.
Okay, Planck's constant, h. Planck's constant over 2 pi is h bar. It's just an h with a bar across it.
Okay.
That's what they call it, h bar. Like a wet bar. So if you look at that equation, and there's a fundamental constant in quantum mechanics, the speed of light is in that equation. So the speed of light appears in the equations of quantum mechanics,
Right.
because photons travel at the speed of light, energy travels, electromagnetic waves travel at the speed of, a lot of things travel at the speed of light. So C is part of that mess.
So how does a quantum entanglement atom
Word.
switch from a negative to a positive through great distances faster than the speed of light?
Ah, that's your question. Okay.
That was
Very easy question to answer. Entanglement is an if-then statement. It's an if-then statement. If you're a programmer, there's logic that says if this happens, then that happens. It's just a programming statement. So You know, if x is greater than 2, then z equals 5. Otherwise, you know, z equals 1. You have these kinds of mathematical equations. So you have an electron that's a spin up, and you have its entangled pair, which is a spin down. And the reason that one's up and one's down is they both got created out of something that didn't have spin at all, so the spin has to equal nothing, so one's up and one's down, so it cancels basically. You still have a system with the spin 0. So you have an up and down, that's a conservation of angular momentum issue. Spin is really angular momentum. There's nothing spinning. Particles aren't sitting here spinning like tops. They just make that up as a description. It's an angular momentum problem. So you have this angular momentum, and entanglement means because these were made together and their angular momentum has to equal 0, if I flip this one, that one has to flip at the same time. Again, it's a conservation rule. And it doesn't matter if these are separated by the whole size of the universe. When one flips, the other one flips. Because there's an if-then statement in the code that says if this one flips, so does that one.
So it's like a set rule.
It's just a set rule. It's part of the rule set.
Okay.
So entanglement is just a set rule that it has to happen. Now think of it as a way you can think of it more physically rather than mathematically. Let's say you have this long plank. Think of like a 2x4. Okay, it's really, really long. And it's so light, but so rigid, you know, some kind of mystery material, right? It's perfectly rigid, so it doesn't flex.
Nanotechnology.
Yeah, but it's 1,000 miles long,
Okay.
100,000 miles long, a light year away. It's that long. Okay, it's just a thought experiment. So you take this thing and you just flip it over. Well, when this end flips, so does that end flip. Whenever I turn this end of this long thing over, the other end turns over exactly at the same time, even though it's 10 light years away.
Right.
It instantly turns over. Does that mean I've communicated it faster than light speed through my plank? No. What it means is it's all part of one thing. And because it's a single thing, it's not two things, it's one thing. So yes, whenever this end of the plank turns over, many light years away, so light couldn't possibly get there, but at the same instant, that other turns over. Okay? That's because it's just one thing. This pair of spin up, spin down,
Right.
it's one thing.
Even though you can't see the connection.
Even though you can't see the connection. And when you make it that far apart, it's still one thing. It's a system that has to conserve angular momentum. And that's true no matter what the space is in between it. So you do that, and that does the other thing.
That makes sense.
So you just think of it as a single system. And in the code, that's just an if-then statement. If this, then that, because you've got an angular momentum conservation law that says that if one's up, the other one's down.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Wow. Come up and ask him what it is.
Welcome, nice to meet you. So, I'm very new, like I just find out about all this movement, about your work, but I see a lot of like the same stuff that I've heard before from another, and like what you mentioned, and a lot of people talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
My question is, when you talked about time and how it's produced out of previous moment of time, how universe is rendering itself, and there is a smallest increment of time and smallest increment of space. That triggered the question: is there smallest increment of love, or love is a property of consciousness, or how do you see love itself?
Love, I'm probably the only person in the universe that will give you a technical definition of love. Love is a low entropy consciousness. Love, maybe I could put it this way, love is the nature of a low entropy consciousness. So yes, it's an attribute of consciousness. When consciousness has evolved to its, to its kind of its point of, to where it is fully without fear, it is love. Love isn't something you have to put together or build. Love is something you get after you've taken away the fear. So you have consciousness, the consciousness has fear, the fear creates ego and beliefs, and it's all very dysfunctional and basically unhappy. You get rid of the fear, and as you get rid of the fear, the consciousness becomes lower and lower entropy, more and more evolved, and when you get rid of all the fear, what's left is love. So it's a property of consciousness. It's the I guess a description or the quality of a low entropy consciousness. So no, love doesn't come in the little bits. And in fact, I guess the way it does, love can grow and grow and grow as you get rid of the fear. So it changes as the level of fear changes. But love is where we're all headed. Now, interesting thing about that is that tends to bring up the idea of endpoints. What happens when we're done?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you get rid of all your fear,
Mm-hmm.
and now your love. All right, then what happens?
Mm-hmm.
What do you do? Well, there's some interesting things about that. One, entropy is such that if you don't keep putting energy into it, it starts to grow.
Mm-hmm.
And that's true of everything. That's the second law of thermodynamics, pretty much, that says if you don't keep putting energy into a system to keep energy lower, the energy just grows.
Mm-hmm.
In our universe, what that means is that if we wait long enough, there will be nothing left in our universe except elementary particles and hydrogen atoms. Everything decays. Even piece of metal. You take a block of steel and set it here. If you wait long enough, that block of steel will evaporate because everything has a vapor pressure. There's little molecules flying off every once in a while. You may not lose a lot of them. The wait long enough may be a couple of billion years, but eventually everything decays and returns to particles which don't exist. It turns to non-existent particles. It turns back into potentiality is what it returns back into. It becomes something potential, not that thing anymore. So if you get to the point where there's no fear and your love, you have to still keep working on it, still keep practicing, still keep living it, or that fear will start to reassert itself and you'll start to go backwards. So the answer to the question is, when am I done? Is never. You're never done. And I have a kind of a little funny story that goes with that. I was taken once to a reality frame, and I was shown a lot of things. A lot of the reality frames that I've gotten around to, I've gotten them to them not because I'm so clever to have gotten there. I was just taken there because it was something educational for me to see. This particular reality frame was a reality frame for people who were done. Actually, people who thought that they were done and demanded that they weren't going back into that hellhole again. They weren't going to reincarnate anymore because they were done. And for the most part, these were pretty well-developed individuals. So if the person, it's free will, doesn't have to go back. So if you say, no, I'm done. So okay, put you in the done place. So these individuals went into the done place. And there was a lot of them there. And they chit-chatted and talked and congratulated each other on being done. That sort of thing. And I noticed, and it's like, why am I here? Because I get sent places, but I never get told why I'm there. I have to figure it out. And I stayed there for probably, a month or two. I was there. And eventually I realized that these groups were getting, and were, once I kind of knew enough that I could kind of be part of it, I realized that there were cliques among these groups. Some were decidedly more done than others. And the ones that were most done kind of looked down at the ones that weren't as done. And that's what was going on. And then I would see that every once in a while, one of them would just break off and leave. And those were the ones that realized they weren't done. I need to get back to work. And they wanted out. So that was this reality. That's where the people who are done got. So if you don't keep working on it, you will de-evolve. It's just the nature of it. And how do you work on it? You apply it. It's not the theory you work on. It's the expression you work on. It's the doing it. And here's another way of looking at this. When you grow up and become love, it's about other. It's not about you. It's about other. So here I am. I've made it. I'm done. I'm love. It's all about other, right? But I'm getting the hell out of here because this place is beneath me. Does that sound like somebody who just wants to help other people? Not so much. Sounds like somebody that's thinking about number one, finding a happier place to live. So when you do get to the point that you're mostly love, what you want to do more than anything is be part of the solution. Is to help other people grow up. It's not like I don't want to go back because I'm done. It's I wanted to go back because now I know enough to be really helpful. Before, I was too full of myself to be very helpful. But now I could be more helpful. So what you want to do is help. You don't want to escape. So somebody who's really done is anxious to come back and help. Not disappear someplace. Good luck to the rest of you. I'm out of here. So that's kind of the end game. There is no end game because your entropy will just grow if you don't keep exercising your ability to give. So you never are in a place to stop. And what that means is that same as in the like with temperature, physics will tell you you'll never get to absolute zero. You can get close, but you can't ever quite get there. It's the same with having your entropy go to zero. You can get close, but you can never quite approximate it. But zero entropy isn't really achievable, but really, really close is, and really, really close is wonderful because now you're very helpful to other people. And what you want to do more than anything is apply that to being helpful to other people because that's what it means to be loved. So that's kind of the end game. It's not about escaping. It's about becoming more useful. So if you...
Slavery though?
What's that? No, there's no slavery. See, the thing that defines slavery is no free will. You're a slave by definition if you don't have choices, if others can make your choices for you. This is all done out of free will. You do that because you want to. It has nothing to do with slavery whatsoever.
It actually needs to be rebranded. Because if you make the choice that you are done, and you don't want to go back.
Right.
And
you don't have to. You don't have to go back. You can make the choice that you don't want to be back even if you know you're not done. You can just say, wow, that was tough. Don't want to do that anymore. Sorry. Not interested. Nobody makes you go back. You have free will. Free will is never abrogated. You always have free will. So they say, fine. Good. Sit in the chair. Go wherever you want to go. See you around. Nobody says, you got to go back. People want to go back because sitting around gets boring. There are other places, and you can say, well, I'll go somewhere, but not there. There's other reality systems. This is not the only virtual reality in town. The system doesn't put all its eggs in one basket. You know, we can blow ourselves up, you know. It's got other things going on, so you could say, yeah, I'd go back, but not there. And I'll say, fine, sure. How about here? How about there? Which one do you want? You get to pick. So it has nothing to do with slavery whatsoever. You always have choice. You're never forced to do anything. You're never even browbeat. Nobody comes out hard sell or twist your arm or anything else. You say no, it's no. And that's the way it is. You're never forced. All of the things you do are with your own free will choice. Nobody ever squeezes you, intimidates you, threatens you, nothing like that. So it has absolutely nothing to do with slavery. Now, I have heard just the opposite. And most of that falls into the area of conspiracy theory. And there are lots of people who have lots of fear. And when you have lots of fear, you see lots of scary things. And some of those scary things I've heard about is that don't ever go toward the light. That's a trick. When you go toward the light, you're being trapped into the prison planet, you see? And that's just fear. It has no basis in reality. That's just fearful people finding something else to be afraid of. When you're fearful, you will find things to be afraid of. You live in New York City, where there are very few wild animals that are smaller than a bread box, I mean bigger than a bread box, and you're terrified of elephants. There are no elephants in New York City, at least maybe in a zoo, but not walking around wild. But if you're terrified of elephants in New York City, you'll see a puddle, and you'll say, see, that's an elephant's footprint. The rain filled up. You'll see the wind shake the bushes. There's an elephant hiding behind those bushes. You will find signs of elephants everywhere. That's the way fear is. Fear manifests what you're afraid of. And sometimes it actually manifests it fully. I mean, right there in flesh and blood. But if it doesn't manifest in flesh and blood, it'll manifest it in belief. Because that's what fear does. So people who are very fearful will find plots against them and horrible things everywhere imaginable because they're fearful. That is the biggest problem with conspiracies, is that they're fear-based. And they tend to make other people fearful. Fear is the enemy. Fear is the thing that de-evolves us. Fear is the opposite direction. So anything that causes more fear in the world is part of the problem, not part of the solution. Anything that's scary. So why do we have so much scary stuff in the world? That's because fear is a handle by which you can be manipulated. If I know what your fears are, I can make you dance to any tune I want. Okay, so who would want us to be fearful? Well, the people that want our money, right? Advertisers. You better buy this beer or the girls wouldn't like you. You know, well, it's insecure that wants the girls to like him, you know, wants to buy that beer now because that helps them feel better. And you know, if you got pimples, do this and nobody will like you. If you got this, if you got that, you need this medicine, you need this stuff, you need this shampoo, you need all this stuff. And they show the people who don't have the stuff, you know, they look really bad and nobody likes them. And the people who use the stuff, sparkles come off their hair, and the opposite sex comes around them like bees and honey, right? I mean, obviously, there's a message there, but it's all about fear. So who wants us to be fearful? Advertisers want us to be fearful. Who else wants us to be fearful? Politicians want us to be fearful. By that fear, they can make us vote however they want. The law wants us to be fearful. So we don't transgress the law or else they'll get you. And they find, of course, that doesn't work. People don't do good things because they're fearful of not. People do good things if they're good people or if they're trying to be good people. But there's lots of people, religions would like to scare you about the fire and brimstone and what's going to happen to you if you don't believe what they'd like you to believe. Fear helps you manipulate people into putting more money in the offering plate or into doing whatever they want you to do. So there's lots and lots of fear in the land. And a lot of it is drummed up. You know, in the States, we went through this thing with Bush that was, okay, it's on red now. Watch out. There's a terrorist behind every bush. Now it's on yellow. Be on your guard. Well, all that was just keeping the drums of fear going because he had political ambitions that needed a population to support it, and you just manipulate people's fear. You get them to do whatever you want. So a lot of people keep sending fear out there. And unfortunately, there are a lot of frightened people that take it right up, repeat it, shout it in a loud voice, and pass it on. And other people who are fearful immediately grab onto it. Yeah, right, prison planet, no free will. Everybody's out to get us. All the systems are against us, that sort of thing. Well, if you feel small and vulnerable and you have a lot of fear, that's an easy sell. It's a real easy sell. People reach out for that because it excuses them from saying that I make myself. I am who I am because of my choices. Nonsense, nonsense. You are who you are because of all this awful stuff that's manipulated you into being that. You see, you no longer have any personal responsibility if you're manipulated all the time. So that's another value of fear. It gets people out of being responsible for where they are. So anyway, we got too much fear in this world, way too much fear. Probably more fear now than there was any time almost. Shoot, when I was 6, 7 years old, my parents would say, go out and play, come back before dinner.
Yeah.
Now, parents won't let a child, more than 10 feet away from them without being terrified that somebody's going to grab them or do something to them or whatever. When I was a kid, we never locked the door to the house. It was just inconvenient. You'd have to reach in your pocket and get a key. You'd have to carry it. We never took the keys out of the car. You park the car and leave the keys in them because it's too much trouble carrying the keys around. Where you needed the key was in the car, not in your pocket. I mean, that's just the way it was. Life was like that. That's in the 50s, right? Early 60s. Nobody locked their houses with their keys. I'm 6 years old. Get on my bicycle, gone for 4 hours, come back at dinner time. That was it. That doesn't exist anymore. There's so much fear in our society that we're terrified about everything. We're almost terrified just to exist and be. We're terrified to be authentic. If you ask people, are you authentic? Who's the authentic you? Are you really who you are authentically? You're right deep down there. Are you an authentic being? And most people will say, I have no idea what the authentic me is. How would I find out that? Because most of us are a summary of our cultural overlays. We're trying to be polite. We're trying to be likable. We're trying to fit in. We're trying to be attractive. We're trying to do all those things the best we can, and none of that has to do with being real. It has to do with our acting, our image, what we want to look like, what we want others to see in us. Authenticism, who's authentic? Very few people really are just who they are. But when they are, they're mostly happy. You see? But that again has to do with fear. We fear if we don't do those things, if we don't use that shampoo or whatever, we won't be as good. If we don't try to be likable, nobody will like us. If we don't act this way, we'll be rejected. So it's fear, 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 fear driving all of this. And fear is the opposite of love, which is where we're trying to go. So that's a problem. So prison planet? No. That's just more conspiracy, fear, mongering. Free will is never challenged. You don't want to incarnate anywhere at all. You're on your own. Most people want to come back very shortly. even if they don't want to begin with. Why? For one, your past experience evaporates in your memory like a dream. 5 minutes after you cross over, you barely remember where you were and how awful it was. You see? So when you die, your past memories are like a dream. They just fly away. And it doesn't take long at all before you don't remember any of that. So you don't go on the other side angry and upset about all the indignities you had to suffer. You don't feel like that. That goes away. That was just a bad dream. That wasn't even a bad dream. You don't remember it was a dream. This is gone. So all that angst and stuff disappears. Most people very shortly say, yeah, I'll get back in the game. This sitting around standing in line is really nowhere. I'm wasting my time. Because everybody has in them a sense of wanting to grow, wanting to become, wanting to do something. So that's probably more than you ever wanted to know about your question. But it's sort of connected, maybe.
Okay, mine's kind of a convoluted question, but and it's not at all scientific. It's more about the choices that some of us continuously make over and over. Some of them a few more times than others, but it's really just comes down to just trying to figure out how we can determine what belief system or fear it is that is driving our motivation and intent to make certain choices in our life. Obviously they come at different times in our lives, and sometimes we're just in a different stage of evolution, so don't really understand what they are. And I find that a lot of the choices come with lessons that you can learn from and go, I'm not going to do that again. But then all of a sudden we make a decision again which kind of repeats similar patterns. Just trying to figure out if there's a way to determine what these belief systems are, or what the fears are that we can't see on the conscious level, I guess, here.
There is. There is a way, and it's not even very hard.
Okay.
That's the good news. It's not very hard to see it. It's a lot more difficult to get rid of it. But your fears are largely unknown. They're very hard to find. Your beliefs are largely unknown, and they're very hard to find. The beliefs are hard to find because if you believe it, then you don't question it. It's just true. So you don't see it as a belief. So you never question it, then it just stays there. You say, well, that's not a belief. That's just a fact. All your beliefs become facts in your mind. So they're very hard to see. But there is one thing that is easy to see, and that's ego. How do you find ego? Now, people don't notice their own ego, and they don't say, oh, well, that was egotistical. They don't notice that either. But what they do notice is negativity. If you ever have a feeling of being upset, annoyed, angry, dissatisfied, you know, on and on and on and on, right? All the negative things, even anxiety, upset, furious, hurt, all of those negative emotions. If you ever feel anything negative, that's your ego. If you didn't have any ego, you wouldn't feel anything negative. Feeling those negative things are about I. I feel bad. I've been hurt. I've been abused. I'm not appreciated. Nobody listens to me. Say, I have bad luck. It goes on and on and on. I don't have options. I live in the prison planet. You have lots of things that are negative. Every one of those negatives are tied to an ego, and every ego is tied to a fear. If you don't have fear, you don't have ego. If you don't have ego, you don't have negative things. So whenever you have any negative feeling, whenever you feel annoyed or upset or irritated or even anxious, stop right there and say, wow, I just kind of felt some anger pour up there. What's What's the fear driving that? That's my ego. What's the fear driving? And if you are honest with yourself to really find out the fear driving it, it always goes back to things like insecurity, not feeling adequate, abandonment, things like that, basic things. And you almost always find that the reason you feel abandoned or inadequate or unlovable or not good enough is for some small reason. Long time ago, Mama came home, gave your 2 siblings new toys, and didn't give you one. Well, you were 2 or 3 years older than the other ones, but you still didn't get one, and it just wasn't fair. And you felt the reason you didn't get it was because you weren't good enough. So you find that those are the kinds of things that give you feelings of being inadequate, which later informs your whole life and all your choices. Now, when all it was is that Mama thought the 2 little ones needed something, or she just didn't have any more money than that, or she just gave you something last month and not them, or who knows what Mama was thinking. But she wasn't trying to tell you that you weren't good enough. But the child picks that up, and that will stick with them for life. So almost always when you find those fears, if you face them, accept them, they disappear like smoke. They're paper tigers. They're not real. They're not anything that has any substantial, there's nothing substantial about them. So the hard part's finding them. Look at a negative feeling. Next time you get upset with something or get hurt, say, why am I hurt? Why do I feel this way? And you will find it's because that hurt is something that makes you feel bad about yourself. It makes you feel you've been abused or upset or misused or misunderstood or you weren't good enough or whatever. And when you feel that, because you have a fear of it, anything that triggers that feeling blossoms up. Boom, big time. We call that buttons. You get your button pushed, and that thing pushes your button, and that fear just roars up, and it takes a while to get that back under control. But the fear itself almost certainly comes from something that's not so big. Not always. Many times people come out of dysfunctional families where they were abused badly. They were beaten or other things happened. So it's not always just a paper tiger. But when you go back there, still, it was something that happened way back then that isn't happening anymore. That's gone. Nobody's beating you now. But you still have that sense of being inadequate, not being good enough, of being inferior, being unlikable. So that's the way you find your fear. If you ever have a negative feeling, that's your fear. That's your ego, and that's your fear. That's very discouraging to people because most people can count their negative feelings like by the minute. You have a negative feeling, this week? Like, yeah, I got upset this week, I got annoyed this week, I had to cry this week because somebody upset my feelings. Yeah, weekly, daily, mostly, yeah. Hourly, well, maybe not quite that much, but close. Particularly you work in jobs, you have trouble with the other workers, your boss doesn't like you, you just have things like that. Your car doesn't work, you take it in and some mechanic rips you off because they tell you that it's your water pump went bad. Right? That's what you get told when you take your car to a mechanic and you're a girl. They tell you the water pump goes bad and that'll cost you $400 to get your car back. So you live in this world that is reasonably rough place. This world can be pretty abusive. It can be a hard place to live, but if you don't have the fear, you can live there and still be happy. Still find life to be terrific. Find life to be good because The fear isn't, the hard stuff isn't about you. It's about them. You see, as people that are being unpleasant to you or being rude to you, it's not about you. It's about them. They're rude people. They're unhappy. They're miserable people, and they're taking it out on you. Whereas if you have the fear and somebody's rude to you, it's about you. They're being rude to you. How unfair that is to me, you know, me, I, and it's all about how that's unfair to you rather than, it has nothing to do with me. That person just has some problems they're working on. And then you have compassion for them because you know they're miserable and they're working on their problems and they're just spewing out all this hate and negativity and stuff. And you feel like what they need is somebody to just give them a hug, you know, and tell them to lighten up a little. So you have empathy and you have compassion for them because they're miserable. But it doesn't make you miserable because it has nothing to do with you. You see, so you can live in a very rough world, even a mean world, and still be happy, and still find joy, and find peace, even amongst all the roughness, if you don't have the fear. It's the fear that ties you to the negativity. So something negative happens, that fear locks you in. And now you feed it. You feed it by getting angry. So somebody says something rude, and you get angry. That anger then makes them say something else rude. You get even more angry. And it just keeps going like that till it explodes, and somehow then it quits, and both people are worse off than they were before. If you just see that that person who used to make you angry is just showing themselves as a very unhappy, miserable person, and you have compassion for them, you're not angry at all. And actually you help them get over the anger because you're no longer feeding them with your anger. This anger thing is a mutual thing. It takes two, you know, to fight. So they get better because there they were mean, they said stuff to you, they called you names, and you just threw them a kiss and said, have a happy life. I'm sorry you feel so bad. And they know you're not being sarcastic, but you mean it. That really helps them. That really helps. They see that, and they want to be like that. So you help everybody else grow as you grow up. So that's how you find fear, through ego, through negativity. And every time something happens to you as you get a negative feeling, just say, stop that. It's not a matter of putting on a smile when you feel miserable. That's acting. That isn't going to help. It's a matter of not being miserable. Say, I don't want to feel this way. And then, you know, again, this is your intellect telling you, I don't want to feel this way, not I want to cover it up. I don't want to feel this way. And if you say that enough times and you mean it, you will modify future probability to where you won't be that way. It'll just go away all by itself just because you will it to. See, it's not terribly hard, but it takes time. It's not going to go away because you do that once. You have to do that consistently. Every time you're upset, take a deep breath, let it go, accept it, let it pass on. It's not about you. Don't own it, don't take it, don't feed it. Just let it go by. It's somebody else's problem. And maybe one day you'll be able to help that person with that problem. But some people you can't help. Some people you have to give them a hug and they'll slap you. Some people just, you can't be nice to them. Well, then you leave them alone. You avoid them. You walk around them. You don't talk to them. If they happen to be your mother or your little sister or somebody you can't walk away from, you just become polite and superficial and deal with them as little as necessary. That's how you deal with people like that. So I don't know if that helps any. I feel like I'm almost making you cry.
Not at all.
I don't know.
I had a couple of questions for you. It's interesting, a number of questions I had you seem to have already answered, but
I was most interested hearing you speak about different incarnations and different dimensions that we might visit in between times. And I'm interested in being able to bring the knowledge that we've learned from past lives or past incarnations forward, and how much free will choice we have in choosing our avatars moving forward to further our education and our opportunity to grow up.
Okay, how much input do we have to the avatar that we get to do next time?
Mm-hmm.
Well, getting a particular situation for our next incarnation is a difficult thing to do because there is so much uncertainty in the mix. Just in the biology and in the social interaction, there is so many people with free will doing things for their own reasons. It's really hard to lay a plan that has a chance of working, for very long. But what happens is that if you have specific things you want to work on, well, you can voice that. And if you're not sure what your specific things are, there are people there that will help you. One of the tools they use is a life review. So if you say, well, I don't know what I want to work on, as far as I know, I was just perfectly loving and never got upset, was never negative, and I think I'm done, right? And they'll say, well, come here, what it was like. And then you get the life review, and they won't go through your whole life, they'll just jump into things where they show you, flying off the handle, getting angry, misinterpreting, they show all that stuff. And then that's just to get you to be serious about doing better. Get you focused. And after you get focused, you say, well, okay, I could see I really do have an anger management problem. I fly off the handle, I get really upset, and then I regret it later. I break a lot of things, burn a lot of bridges, and then I'm sorry about it. So I want to get in a situation next time to help me fix that. And you pretty much have to let the system pick that out, because it's really hard. I mean, how do you pick that? Yeah. It's really hard now, because they have all the probability information on pretty much everybody, because everybody's been around the circle enough times, and the database has all the probabilities and all the things they thought and said and did. So the system has a pretty good idea what is likely to happen, but it doesn't know exactly what's going to happen, because that's free will. So it matches you with something that's likely to be a good spot for you to learn the lessons you have to learn. So maybe it puts you in a place of a great deal of power, where if you fly off the handle and get angry, you really make big messes, not just little messes. You affect hundreds of millions of other people with your tantrums. You make big messes. Or maybe they'll put you in a place where you have to interface with people who are angry. Maybe you get an angry father or an angry boss or an angry whatever that you have to deal with. And through dealing with them, you see, oh yeah, I used to be like that. I get it now from the other side. Somehow they'll find something that looks like a good match for you. So that's kind of how you pick them. You don't really go down and say, okay, here's all the babies you're going to be born in the next 25 minutes, and here are their possibilities, go pick one. That's too much. It's too hard, too many, too complicated. So you just let the system do its best to pick out something for you that'll work, is the way it works. Now you might say, well, I found that when I incarnate with Joe and Susie, we all do better, because Joe is just really good at pushing my buttons and getting me to see the problems I have. And you might make that plan, and you and Joe and Susie may then incarnate in some way that maybe you're brothers and sisters, or maybe you're a father, and a son, and a next door neighbor. I mean, it's hard to say, but you somehow end up in a situation where you know each other and interact, and that works out. And half the time it doesn't work out at all, because the whole thing just blows apart when people make free will choices that were unexpected.
Right.
So there is some in it, some say in it. At one extreme, which is the beginning of these incarnations, you don't really have a life review. You don't really request anything. You just need experience. So you've only been around 2 or 3 times. You just need experience. You need to be male and female, rich and poor, black and white, you know, Chinese and Eskimo. You need to just get experience in this reality frame. A lot of diversity. So in that case, no planning. You pop out, you jump in without a whole lot of thought. But eventually, you end up with things like anger management or other issues where you have problems. Now you start to plan a little. Then eventually after that, your plans get more involved. And if they're significant enough to the system will nudge the players in this conspiracy. They're all going to work together. Will kind of nudge them to get them together and to help them do what they want to do. The system will work with you to do that. And then all the way out on the other extreme end are people whose incarnations are almost scripted. They come here for a purpose. They have a mission. They must pass through these hoops. They must get that credential. They must do this and that. And here's what they're supposed to be doing. And that's kind of at the other end, where it's more scripted. And that's usually along with the system cooperating with that to help nudge that situation along. So you see it goes from nothing to a lot. The average person doesn't spend a lot of time worrying about it. They tend to be in and out with a little planning to get things that they feel like they're weak in. But there's not a lot of doing it because most of us are pretty, low quality consciousness. We've come a long way. Used to be a lot worse. Go back even 200 years, 1700s, 1800s, 1500s. It was a lot worse. Life was a lot cheaper. It was a lot meaner. It was a lot tougher. You think it's mean and tough today. Well, this is like Candyland compared to the way things were a few hundred years ago. Things were really hard, really abusive, really difficult. Your lifespan was like, 40 years old or something. It was a very hard thing. So we've come a long way. We are growing up. And the good news is that the growth scale isn't just linear like this. It starts out very, very slow, but it curves up and gets faster and faster because the more you know, the easier it is to know more. So we're in that part where the curves, we're at the bend of the curve, at a place where we can start making big strides. I mean, we've made big strides in 300 years. Well, 300 years out of the 200,000 we've been around is an eye blink. We've made more progress in that eye blink than we had in the whole, 197,000 years before that. So it's a good time. There's a lot of change going on.
Yeah, one other quick question. You spoke about linear, and I've heard it said by quite a few non-physical entities that that time is only linear here in this physical dimension.
Well,
can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, time is linear everywhere, but it doesn't appear linear from everywhere. Let's say our time in this virtual reality of ours, time is the delta t that's in the simulation. That's just local to us. That's our time, and the simulation moves ahead 1 delta t at a time, and that's linear time. But that's only time here. That's local time to this virtual reality. Some other virtual reality has its own clock. So every virtual reality has its own clock. So in some virtual realities, there's very fine resolution. Others, there's very coarse resolution. Time goes by fast or slow. And so you can't, from here looking elsewhere, time looks very warped or changed. That's because all the clocks are different for each one. But all the clocks have to be synchronized in some way with the main clock, which is the larger consciousness system, has the fastest frequency, the fastest tick-tock going. And it's just changing states between 1 and 0. So everybody else is like our clock is maybe, one tick of our clock for every, billion ticks on their clock. We get one tick on our clock. So it's the fastest clock, because that's the fastest clock, or the smallest time, has to be at the higher level. Everything else is down from that.
So it's just a question of perception.
It's mostly a perception. Yes, it's almost completely a perception. You can go into a virtual, I said I spent 3 or 4 weeks in that done reality. Well, that 3 or 4 weeks was spent doing 3 or 4 weeks worth of stuff according to my perception. And I was there and we stayed there. There's all kinds of conversations. I was with lots and lots of different, enough stuff that in my perception, that took 3 or 4 weeks to do all that, to gather the data that I had to gather. But basically it was done over maybe 3 or 4 evenings. And when you have to do it in multiple evenings, basically the next night you go there you are, you're right back there again. And then the next night, there you are, you're right back there again. And then it's over, you're done. But as far as your perception of the time that passed, because of the number of conversations you had or the number of things you've seen, it's like been a month. It seems like a month worth of work got done. So yes, it's just perception. When you can run things at higher speed, like you can take your music or a phone call, and you can double the speed on it. Makes the frequency sound like it goes up. So talk professor life, it goes like that. But you can eventually, if you listen to that, you can learn to understand all that. You can understand it at double and triple speed. You can process it that fast. But you don't have the tools to say it that fast. Your body is too slow. This electromechanical avatar we have can't reproduce that. Right. So when you're a consciousness, you can run a lot of data through at a very, very high speed, and you can get a whole month's worth of stuff in that would take you, a month to do here. You can get that very fast there. Consciousness is fast, the body is slow. Right. So we're kind of limited to what this avatar can do. And that's why we have these experiments. Dean Radin did some of them. They'll have a computer with 1,000 pictures, some of them pretty and lovely, and some of them really gross and nasty. And they'll wire up a person and measure little tiny volts in their muscles and stuff. And they'll find that there's a random number generator that selects a picture. Before the random number generator ever selects the picture, a person starts going tense before an ugly picture gets selected and shows them something horrible. So it's like, well, what's going on with that? The random number generator didn't even make its pick yet, and the person's already reacting to the picture. And they use that kind of an experiment to make the statement that, well, there is no free will. It all has to be determined, you see. That next picture is determined no matter what. And so it's a deterministic reality. That's nonsense. They just don't understand consciousness. Consciousness, there's your little c consciousness, and then there's the big C, larger conscious system. Consciousness has a problem in this virtual reality, and that is consciousness is very fast. These electromechanical avatars we have are very slow. And what happens is you end up with what's equivalent in a virtual reality game to video lag. Okay? So, here's another experience. You have an experiment that says, okay, when the bell rings, raise your right hand. They will find that people, little tiny electropotentials in muscle tissue, will start the process of activating a muscle before the bell's rung. Why is that? It's the same thing with the pictures. because otherwise there'd be this video lag. Just like the picture, there'd be a video lag. The ugly picture would come up, and you just sit there and stare at it. It's awful. You know, there'd be a video lag between when things that happen. Our body is so slow that they have to start these tiny potentials starting to move things, which moves something else, which secretes this hormone, which secretes some more sugar, which sends this chemical here, and it flows through the bloodstream, and you got all of this stuff going on, and if you don't start it early, you have video lag. So you get it all started early, so that 5 seconds later, when that ugly picture comes up, the person's ready to jump or holler or go or have some kind of an emotional reaction to it. Otherwise, the picture would come up, they'd sit there like they were dead and then react 5 seconds later. Well, we wouldn't be able to drive cars, fly jet planes, or do any kind of athletics at all if we didn't have something to take this video lag out. That's the difference between consciousness and the body. So that's the mechanism. Because the larger conscious system knows what's coming. After all, that random number generator was done in a computer. It's a pseudo-random number. Well, that's a virtual computer. That's the larger conscious system's that computer. Just like it is creating the avatar. It owns everything, right? Everything on the planet that's going on. It's modeling all that itself. So it knows what's coming. It can start you going ahead of time. So that's why when when we're an athlete, the way we get good is by getting our intellect out of it. Any athlete that's really good will say it's an 80% a mental game.
Yeah, the zone.
Yeah, get in the zone. Yeah, even if you're a painter, you can paint that perfect line and never get a drop on the window pane just because you're in the zone. If your intellect says, oh, I don't want to get any paint there, you most certainly will get paint all over the glass. So it's getting in that zone means you stop thinking about it and you just let it flow. And when it does, the system will get you going just the right way at the right time to do a good job. But when you start second guessing it, the system says, all right, he's gonna, let's say, here's a good example. Take a plank 6 inches wide. Anybody, even somebody who can't walk well, can walk 100 feet across a 6-inch wide plank without falling off. Take that same plank, put it 300 feet in the air over pointy rocks, and see how many of them will walk across it without falling off. Most of the people fall off because they keep second guessing everything. Well, I don't want to fall off. Should I put my foot? Should I take little steps? Should I run? Should I do this? And what happens is if you don't work with the system, you get clumsy because the system's saying, all right, let's get this muscle potential for this step. You've got to get it going early. So we take that step, and then the person says, I don't know if that's the right step. Oh, wrong, little chemicals going the wrong way because now that's not what the person wants to do. So then it starts something else going. And then they say, no, maybe I better put it back the other way because maybe that was the wrong one. See what I mean? It just gets confused. The whole thing's get balled up. And what that means is when you're fearful and you aren't just with it, when you're calculating in your mind and changing things and trying to figure things out, you're clumsy. That's why athletes have to get in the zone, otherwise they're clumsy. That's why people can't walk across a board. But if you just let the system work with you and you're not fearful and you don't second guess and you just move, you're fluid and you're smooth and everything works good for you. So that's probably more than you wanted to know about that question too.
No, that's great.
But it's an interesting thing.
Yeah.
That we have these things that look like we know what the future is, but that's just to reduce video lag in this game so that we can do interesting things like drive cars and stuff. Otherwise, we would be hopelessly inept.
And bored.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah.
Hi, Tom and Candace. Nice to meet
I
you.
bet you thought I'd never get done.
Well,
Sorry.
So I'll try to be a little bit quicker because I know we're
I
getting
should
close
try
to
to be a
5.
little bit quicker. You're doing fine. It's not you that needs to be quicker. It's me that needs to be quicker.
So recently I've been going to this Conscious Connections group, and actually Keith is a facilitator who's just up here. And someone recommended the book to me, Radical Forgiveness. Have you heard of it?
I've heard of it.
And I like a lot of the ideas, but one thing I'm having an issue with, and it's something I've thought of a lot, is this idea that everything happens for a reason, and that the universe is kind of orchestrating things for me, so that if I don't, you know, heal or deal with these things, that the universe is just going to put them in front of me. And I don't disagree that if I keep doing the same thing, I'm going to keep getting what I've gotten, you know, the definition of insanity that nobody knows who said it. I don't disagree with that, and I think that to think that I'm that important, like I just see myself like through evolution, and we're humans and we've evolved, and now that I've traveled I see how small I am compared to the whole world, how many people there are, and I think it's almost egotistical to think that someone has a plan for me. I feel like I create my reality, and that I'm more apt to believe that if I keep on doing the same things, then I'll just keep on having that problem going forward until I work on that. And so I guess, this idea that everything happens for a reason.
Yeah. Well, you are quite, you're skeptical about that for a very good reason. It's because it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, like karma. Right?
Everything doesn't happen for a reason.
Yeah.
There are lots of things that are random.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of things that just happen. And the reason for that is we have free will. If everything was planned, there would be no free will. That would be determinism.
Yeah.
Lots of things happen. I don't know, have you ever heard the term Brownian motion?
No.
Well, I won't use it. If you have a lot of things interacting, it's not necessarily truly random, but if you have a bunch of people and they all have free will, making their own choices for their own reasons, you have a lot of change. You have a lot of things going on. And if these things interact you, and you have to deal with them, well, you have to deal with the fact that he made this choice, and she made that choice, and your mother made a choice, and your sister made a choice, and that means you've got choices to make, and you make choices, and it affects your mother's choice and your sister's choice, and everybody is interacting, affecting everybody else. That is pretty random. It's hard you can't plan that or plot that. So stuff just happens.
Yeah, and I feel that you can make a reason out of it. Like you can say, oh, well, I'll take this opportunity to learn this.
Exactly. There is a lesson in everything. So everything has its lesson, but it doesn't mean that everything is a plan.
Mm-hmm.
Now you can have plans. I said a little earlier that some people are almost scripted. That's a real tight plan. But I'm talking about 1/1000th of 1%. And even the people who have plans with several other people, probably 1/4 of 1%. The people that really don't have any plans at all, or the plans are just very broad, 95, 98, 99%. The planning thing is in the margins, not in the mainstream.
How does that connect to the uncertainty thing you were talking about earlier?
Well, the uncertainty comes in because of all this free will. All the interaction creates uncertainty in what's going to happen. The way you should view life isn't everything happens for a reason and I need to know what the reason is and do it. Is that stuff happens. It just does. I need to deal with it. I need to deal with it in the best possible way. I need to make my choices with as much love and as much caring and consideration and the lowest entropy choice I can. I'll make the choice, and then I need to learn from it if it goes bad, or learn from it if it goes good. And that's the way you live your life. Stuff happens, you get to deal with it. Anything that happens will offer you a lesson because you have to deal with it.
Yeah.
the fact that you need to deal with it means you get an opportunity to deal well or deal poorly. So everything is a lesson, but it doesn't mean that's your plan.
Yeah.
And it has to happen.
I feel like it's like a coping mechanism, like, you know, when a bird craps on your head, you say, oh, it's good luck. But I think it's just something we say so that we don't feel unlucky that it happened to us.
The thing is, if you have an idea that everything is planned, that removes you somewhat from the responsibility of actually running your own life. You become a pawn in some larger chess game, and you don't really have full responsibility. Well, I didn't make that mess. It just was planned.
Yeah.
You see?
Yeah.
Instead of saying, "Oh, I made that mess. I need to learn from it." So you're right. Your things that didn't quite feel right in that are things that weren't quite right in
Well,
that.
thanks. I like being right.
Thank you, Tom.
You're welcome.
Okay, it is 5 o'clock, so that is a wrap. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you very much. And you have been a wonderful audience.
You
You're a
have.
great audience, and the questions have all been outstanding. I know the answers have all been long, but the questions were outstanding. I wish we would have another 4 or 5 hours to do questions. That would be really nice.
The answers were outstanding.
Yeah.